Hey guys, it is CC Garland here again with you. Today, we are going to talk about determining the ARV or after repair value of a particular property. I'm going to show you examples of deals I've already closed so you can know for sure that these are actual examples from the field. I haven't made these up, and it'll also allow you to see what properties look like after they are rehabbed. So one important thing to keep in mind is that you want to be looking at properties that are completely renovated by investors, not mom and pops. And there's a clear difference. As you progress in your investment career, you will notice that there is a clear difference between when somebody just threw some paint and carpet up in a house and an investor that did a complete renovation of a project. So you want to know what that price range is for those completely investor rehabbed properties. That's going to quickly allow you to identify opportunities from leads that might be warm opposed to hot. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we go throughout this video. And one thing I also want you to keep in mind is that determining the ARV is more of like an art than a science. I've seen a lot of tools claim that they can determine the ARV, or they could give you these comparable sales automatically for your particular area. And a lot of investors will take these tools without doing their own analysis. I can look at those tools and pull some comps, and it'll give me an idea of what might be selling in that particular area. But if you are about to contract a property with a seller, you absolutely need to know down to probably like $1,000 what that house will sell for to a rehabber. You don't want to be off. $5,000 could mean the difference of you making a profit or not making a profit when you assign a deal. And also, we want to make sure we get this part right, because we don't want to end up getting in a situation where we're contracting deals and we have to go and renegotiate with the seller. That's the worst feeling ever. So it took me a while to understand this and really get this right. It took me about 1 year to be very comfortable and very confident in my numbers when I determined the ARV. So let's go ahead and jump in a few examples here, and I'll show you why this is more of an art than a science. There are a few guidelines and rules that you will use to determine the ARV, but there isn't one particular magic bullet solution that can be applied to every single market. You're really going to have to dig in that property that you're looking at and look at the surrounding properties in order to determine what an accurate ARV is. So let's go ahead and dive into it. This first example I'm using right here is an area in Charleston. The suburb is actually Latson, South Carolina. And this is one of these median price range type areas where the ARV is around 145, 150. I know off of the top of my head, if that's the case, my cash offer to the seller will be around 60 to 70K. I just know in this area, all of these homes that sell for 150K ARV are cookie cutter. They're in the same types of neighborhoods. They were built the same years, meaning 1960 to 1980, and they don't have any major repair or structural work needed to them. They're all pretty much the same type of property. So I know that based off experience. If I were you and I was new, how would I determine what the ARV is? And to be honest, I would start clicking around and clicking everywhere. So I am going to open up the subject property here. 403 Elliott Drive. This is actually a deal that came across my desk. I'm actually looking at rehabbing this property, but I think the wholesaler who's sending it to me wants a little bit too much for the house. But I'll go ahead and show you how I would determine my ARV for it. So we're looking for properties that have sold to retail buyers, meaning people with kids, not investors. So usually what these prices will be are much higher than the lower limit. So we see 166K here, 200K here, 175K here, 131 and 80K. So I could just know on an average that the ARV might be around 160. It might be lower because we need to actually look and see what the specs of these homes are. So look, our house right here is 939 square feet. That is small. Anything underneath 1,000 square feet in my area and in a lot of areas is really tiny. So what I'm actually going to do is put a filter of 1,000 square feet as the max. So typically I won't go above 20% of the property square footage. So if we do the math here, 939 square feet times 0.20, that's 187 plus 939. So technically I could go up to 1,100 square feet. However, this is one of my rules. If a property is below 1,000 square feet, I only use properties that are 1,000 square feet below as a comp. One thing that I've seen from a lot of cash buyers is that they look at properties below 1,000 square feet a lot differently than as they would if a property is 1,000 square feet or more. So I'm going to use 1,000 as my upper limit here. And look, it removed a lot of properties. One thing we also want to do is only show the sold houses. We do not want to click properties that are for sale right now. Why? Because this is speculation. Somebody could have a house that's 200K on the MLS right now that's 900 square feet. Will it sell? Who knows? So we need to be dealing with actual facts. And the facts are properties that have sold is what home buyers are actually paying for houses. So what I'm going to do is remove this. We don't see any, but if I expand out, we might. Another thing we want to do is also look at properties that have been built in the same time frame. So this area right here is very cookie cutter and it was built up at the same time. So probably between the 1980s and 1990s or 70s. Okay, so yeah, 80s. So what we might have here are also some newer neighborhoods. So what we'll do is actually remove anything above 1989. One thing with me, I like sticking with properties that are in the same decade. So say I have a property built in 1985. I'm still only going to use 1989 and 1980 as my limit, right? So a lot of people would say go 10 years forward, right? So if a property has been built in 1985, they might say go up to 1995. I'm not going to do that because basically properties built in the 80s, they have certain features and characteristics. And in the 90s, you start seeing construction change. Same thing in the 2000s. If I have a property built in 1995, I am not going to use any property built in the year 2000 as a comparable sale. Even if it was built in 1999, I'm still going to just compare 1990 and 1999 properties. That's just something I've seen rehabbers do as well. Your cash buyers are your clients. So remember, just like how with you negotiating with sellers, your cash buyers are going to try anything to get the price down and get that assignment fee down or your offer price with the seller down. So you want to be very, very conservative whenever you are generating your comparable sales and determining what the ARV is. So we have 1980 or 1983, I believe is the year built here. So let's go down 1984. So I'm going to go to the More tab and I'm going to just click 1989 as an upper limit. I'm fine with anything below 1989 or even 1980, but you just don't want to be comparing properties built in the 80s with properties built in 2010. So let's click done and it's going to apply another filter. These are the primary filters I'll use: square footage, year built, and sold in the last 12 months. Those are the only ones I use. If needed, I might drill down a little bit further, depending on the location, like the lot size. Say a lot of the lot sizes just vary so much, and that actually factors in to the sales price. But typically, I'm just going to stick with these three. So let's go ahead and start clicking around and see what the condition of these houses are. All right, so I could tell just based on the street view that this property is It might not be. Yeah, I don't think it's rehabbed. Because look, the roof looks all right, but the parking lot doesn't look that great. And also, it just, yeah, they don't have any pictures from when it was sold. Look, so if there's no pictures, then we could go ahead and determine that it's in either cash value condition or as is condition, either or. So it probably was sold to an investor. Let's click around some more and try to determine what the ARV is. And I'm separating up these videos into determining the ARV and also determining your cash offer and repairs. I think it's important just to focus on the ARV in one video because it's basically the foundation of you generating offers. You really need to understand this. So I zoomed out a little bit. I don't like going out this far, but I could just tell that this is in the same neighborhood because of the size of the streets. So look at these street sizes. They're pretty thin. Now, I will not go across major intersections. You're in a completely different area and neighborhood. So I will not use these properties, even if they're in the same sort of year built and square footage. I would not use these as a comparable sale just because they're in a completely different area. And these look like lots that were sold anyway and new builds. So we have 130. And let's go ahead and just see here. Okay, 940 square feet. Okay, this is a similar layout. 2 beds, 1 bath. Let's go ahead and start clicking on the pictures. Great. Great. Yep. So I can tell this is most likely an investor rehab. And I'm going to go into price and tax history. And we see it was sold in 2016 for 106. So it might have sold to an investor then, or maybe a homeowner. But this looks like it might be an investor rehab right here. Just based on the condition. Usually what you'll see if a homeowner renovated the property is all the walls might be a different color. And there won't be like a backsplash. So this wall might be blue and this wall might be gray. One thing that sort of sends my signals off and lets me know it might not be an investor rehab, but somebody that might have bought the home and lived in it and renovated it is because there's tile floor. Tile floor isn't usually like a standard of home flippers right now. But they do have the hardwood floor here. Usually there will be hardwood floor throughout most of the major walkways, and in the bedrooms there will be carpet. Also, too, some things I'm noticing is the paintwork. The paintwork looks pretty shoddy. You can see right here, it looks almost like they did one pass. They didn't use a primer on it, and it looks like they might have painted over wallpaper. There's like these circular motions. Now I know I'm getting pretty in depth here, but this could be a major difference in 10K. Right? So just because an investor didn't rehab this property, it could be the difference of 130 to 140 to maybe even 150K. Also, too, it doesn't look like the paint is as fresh outside. So it may have been renovated in the last 3 years, but it wasn't just renovated and resold. So that's something to keep in mind here. Let's click around to another property. So this property does not have any pictures. This tells me that this property most likely is in good condition, but a bit dated, right? So if it was newly rehabbed, there would be pictures everywhere. So it was probably listed on the MLS and it's just in as is condition. It's not in poor condition, but it's not in great condition either. So that's not a property we are going to look at and determine the ARV of. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay, this is actually renovated here. I can tell that's an investor renovation. Let's go to price and tax history. Okay, so what this tells me is that they were trying to be very aggressive with the price. So it sold to a rehabber for $70K in August of 2018. 2 months later, that's how long it took them to do the rehab. They tried to get 169 out of it, and it didn't sell. And they kept down the market for several months, and they didn't get the price they wanted. So that tells me that 163, as of this February, which is only a few months ago, is a little bit too high. 163 is too high for a renovated property over here at 1,000 square feet, which is a couple of square feet larger than ours. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So an investor tried to flip this and get 163, 169 out of it, and they were unable to. So right now, what is this telling me? This is telling me that my property will probably rehab from anywhere between 130 to maybe like 150, 145. 145 is probably that sweet spot, because I feel like if this person right here got an offer for 150, they probably would have taken it. But I feel like the offer was a little bit too low than what they were looking at, than what they were comfortable with selling it for. So that's why I'm thinking the ARV will be around 140. And this is also why I mentioned earlier in the video that determining the ARV is more of an art form than a science. You're really going to have to click around and look and see what properties sold for. This is the truest and most accurate way to get comps. One thing I like doing as well, I typically don't like going out this far. I like going really, really close to the property. So this is about the view I like keeping it at. And I'll keep it at the satellite view. If it goes to the regular map view like this, I believe this is just a little bit too far to be looking at. Ideally, I'd want to find properties right in this area over here where my property is for sale. One thing I may do to get a sort of gauge on what property sold for the past couple years is I might go out in my sold date. So I might click any. I know in this area right here, property values haven't shot up that much. The ARV compared to now to a few years ago might be around, maybe like 5 to 10% more. Not a huge difference. So let's see if that added in some more properties. So we have 141 square feet here. I believe this might be a new property. Yeah, because it says year built, no data. So that's a new property right there. So we're not going to take that into consideration. So we have a house that sold for $91K. No images. So that tells me it probably sold in as-is condition. Not rehab, but not in poor cash offer condition. Okay, so let's look at another one. So 99K. And let's see the price history here. 109K. So they were being aggressive with the price. So this tells me that it probably sold in as-is condition. It was good enough for somebody to move in, probably an older couple looking to downsize, but not completely renovate it, because we would see pictures here. So in this particular area, I would probably put the ARV at around 145. That's where I'm looking at on this one. And I'm actually going to change my last sold date down to 12 months again. And I'm going to expand my square footage to see if there's properties with larger square footage selling for 145. Because if so, I know that might be a little bit too high for the square footage of my property. So let's see, 158 here. Okay, 1,100 square feet. Okay, so this is an example of a property that's taken care of and possibly renovated by the current homeowner. You see the walls are red here, tile in the living room. It's lived in, popcorn ceilings. So they updated it, but it's not super rehabbed, right? It's not like a fresh rehab. They just live in it right now. And they did some updates and they took care of it, but the roof needs to be replaced. So 1,100 square feet, that's not bad. 158. So if ours is around 900 square feet, you can probably say safely 145K might be a good ARV. if this is one more bedroom and like 200 more square feet and it's sold in this condition, not completely rehabbed, that tells me that this is probably a property that is a good sort of comparison to what ours will sell for. Let's see some other houses. Okay, so 171K here. Okay, 1,100 square feet. 155K. I'm looking for pictures. I need pictures to be able to tell what the condition of the houses are. 1,200 square feet. 1,200. Yeah, I would say around 145 to 150K is what the ARV is going to be on this one. I'm confident in that. So I hope that gives you an idea of how you would determine your ARV. And based on what I'm doing right here, I should also let you know that you need to get very granular and in-depth whenever you're determining your offer. Just start clicking around and some things will reveal themselves to you. Let's look at another example. I want to show you guys this example right here because it's going to demonstrate the fact that the ARV is not applicable in a lot of areas. So if you're having a tough time determining the ARV and there's been property sold and the ARV looks low, say everything looks like it's selling in the 60s to 70s, that probably tells you this is landlord territory. So you have rehab territory and you have landlord territory. Some areas investors are flipping in, other areas investors are renting in. So they're going to buy the properties, fix them, and rent them out. So they're holding on to them. So essentially they're doing the BRRRR method, which means buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. So you're not going to really see properties that are selling high in these areas because they're holding on to them. There's only going to be that initial sale price and there's not going to be a resale price. So this is a deal I closed a few months ago in Charlotte. And it's a smaller property, just like our previous one. And it was built in 1911. One of my rules of thumb, guys, is if a property is built before 1960, I'm just going to group all of them in the same sort of bracket. So in the previous example, I said we want to look at properties built between 1960 and 1970, 1970 and 1980. Anything before 1960, all of those properties are pretty much the same because they are built essentially the same. They have the same type of floor plans and layout. And also the repair costs are sort of the same, just depending on where it is located. In more historic areas, if there's like a historic preservation board for architecture, you might look at the square footage and the repairs a little bit differently than if you were looking at a property that's in an older neighborhood that doesn't really have an architectural review board. Just keep that in mind. So this house was built in 1911. What I'm going to do is just change the filter here to have 1960 as my upper limit. Because a renovator, he's going to look at any property in this sort of time frame as the same. He's not going to really discriminate in that regard. So I'm going to do the year built of 1960. And this one is 1,000 square feet as the upper limit as well, because this is 906 square feet. So I'm just going to leave it at 1,000. This is our property right here. Let me go ahead and click it to get a gauge on where it is. Okay, it's on South Cloudman Street right here. And we're going to go ahead and start clicking around. All right, this is a nice property, but look at the description here. Great investment opportunity. Who do you think bought this? A regular homeowner or an investor? Probably an investor. Let's actually go to the county records and see if an investor bought it. And we could just find that out by clicking the county website here. We'll probably have to enter in the address. Here it is. Okay, so actually a regular homeowner bought this property. But it could be an investor too because they could have placed the mailing address as the same as the property address, but not live there. I've seen that happen. Let's look at a few more. 54K. Great investment opportunity. So it has the same description. The home needs TLC for the right buyer. So this tells me that this can't qualify for a loan most likely because it needs a lot of work. There aren't a lot of pictures on the inside, so that tells me it probably doesn't look good on the inside if they're not posting them online. So let's go ahead and see if an investor bought this property. So this indicates that the property owner actually lives in this property. Or it could be one of those same situations where the mailing address is the same as the property address, but they don't live there. All right, let's look at a few others. All right, that's the one I bought. Okay, 87K. All right, we're going to go and see if an investor bought this one as well. Okay, so we see this as an absentee homeowner. So while it may not be an investor, it may be somebody who bought this for their family member. But you could go ahead and see what the mailing address looks like. If I see a huge property in a nice neighborhood, then that probably tells me it's an investor. Let's go ahead and look at another one. 109. So this is actually, this looks like a lot. I don't know. Okay. So that's a new build next to it. I don't know if this is a new build. It probably was renovated. Let's see what it sold for. Okay, 109K. So that was a foreclosure, so that's not really a good example. So guys, you see here, you're going to have to like click around a lot just to get a gauge on the particular area because it looks like the comps are all in one particular sort of grouping, but this is much less than my median price sales for this zip code and for this area. So if it's underneath 100K, I really doubt people are going and getting bank loans for these. They have to pay for these with cash. Banks aren't giving loans for $70,000 properties unless you're part of a special program, like you're a senior citizen or you're a veteran or something like that. Most of these houses selling underneath the 100K with repairs, they need to be bought with cash. So while they may not be investors buying a lot of properties, they may be investors that are just like looking for different rental properties, but they work full-time jobs, right? They don't invest full-time, if that makes sense. So this is a group of people that actually live in a different area, or it looks like a husband and wife. So I'm going to see what their mailing address looks like. If I see like a huge mansion, then I know that's probably a cash buyer. Okay. So I'm going to click around a little bit. I'm going to expand my window out here. Okay. So this property is dated right here. Let's see if an investor bought this one. Okay, all right, we found one. We found one. An investor actually bought this property here. And because we see it's David Ashley Realty LLC. So they bought this for 87K. So ours is similar square footage. Year built is actually much higher. So I'll take that in consideration. And also this one doesn't look like it's in as bad as condition as ours was in. I don't have pictures right now, but ours was in pretty rough condition. So it tells me, okay, optimistically, 87K is what we're looking at. Far as probably an upper limit. That's a little bit far out than where I like going. But that lets me know that, okay, investment properties are probably being bought from anywhere between 60, 40, and 70K. So to look at our property, what we sold it for 61K. So we basically went and we've had a buyer in mind already, and we pitched the deal to him before we got it under contract. Now, if you don't have buyers, this is very difficult to do. So you really want to go and see what cash buyers bought for properties in these areas if you're not seeing an ARV, right? So there's no properties that when you open them up, they look completely renovated. So that really caused a lot of trouble to me whenever I first started. I had no idea if I was making the right offer. I didn't know if I should offer 109. I didn't know if I should offer 70K. But in these particular situations, you could just look and see what the group and majority of the properties are selling for and probably just back out your wholesale fee from that. And that's exactly what we did. After talking to our buyer and looking at the comps, we determined that 49 was about a good offer because we saw everything selling for around 60K in the area for cash and as investment properties. So that's how we determine our offer in this area. Trust me, it's very difficult when you're underneath 100,000, especially when you're playing around this 50K price range, because there's literally no room for error. If you offer the seller a certain price and you don't have enough room for your assignment fee, it's very difficult to go back and negotiate with them because there's already a thin profit margin for them, especially if they have a mortgage on the home. Let's use one more example. And this is one in Florida that we actually we sold. So this price right here is reflecting the renovated price. So we actually bought it for, I think 50K. Let me see, 66K is what we wholesaled it for. It was actually a little bit higher than this because the assignment fee is not reflected. In Charlotte, our assignment fees are reflected on Zillow. Here they aren't. So I believe we actually sold this for like 79K or something like that, or 80K. We pulled a 10K assignment fee out of it. But they actually listed it for sale for 125 after they bought it from us. I don't even think they did any renovations. I think they just literally listed it on the MLS, because look at the sold date and then look at when it was listed. And so they sold it because it was already in this condition whenever we found it. So basically, we wholesaled the deal to a buyer who then wholetailed the deal on the MLS. So he didn't have to do any repairs to the property. We actually know the ARV here is 120 grand. And we knew that too by looking at other properties in the area. So I'm going to loosen up my filters here. So 980 square feet. Let's go up to probably like 1200, because 980 is really close to 1,000. I mean, it is really close. And let's see what year it was built. Okay, 1968. So I'm going to do 1969 as an upper limit here. All right, boom. So this is a great example because it's a cookie cutter neighborhood and most of the properties have the same size lot. You know, everything looks uniform. Everything looks the same. So it's so easy right now to determine what the ARV of a property would be. So I'm just going to start clicking around. 110. Okay, so this is a property that's in good condition, but the homeowner renovated it because look, this wall is like teal. And this wall is gray or tan. The popcorn ceilings, whenever they scrape them, it's not smooth. So a professional painter, you wouldn't even be able to tell that there's some scraping there. I can tell in this one that the homeowner did it. This lighting fixture like this wouldn't be there. That's like a very dated 1990s kitchen light. These cabinets right here, if they're not original to the house, the homeowner definitely took liberty to put them in here because you normally wouldn't see cabinets like this from a rehabber. Nor would you see this type of hardwood floor. It will usually be like dark cherry oak. It wouldn't be tan. So that tells me though that 110, that's about decent for a property that looks like it's completely renovated, but a homeowner did their own thing to it. So let's try to find a completely renovated home. What does that look like? Yep. Yep. So this is completely renovated. Probably was lived in for a couple years before it was resold, but still it looks pretty nice. 160. So this is a little bit larger than ours. So this, I wouldn't even consider this as a comparable sale. 145K. Okay, this is actually sort of, it feels like it's in a different area after you cross this street right here. So I want to just stay in this particular area. This gives me more than enough to work with. So I see this 125K right there. 75K is like the lower limit. This is somebody that renovated the house, but probably rented it out after they renovated it. See, look, yep, they sold it and then they rented it. So that's how we determine our offer as well. I'm going to make another video on determining your offer, but you can start seeing the process that I go down and the process that I use to determine my offer. I'm looking at properties that are rehabbed, and I'm also looking at properties that have sold for cash. So we essentially said, okay, the ARV is going to be around 125, 130-ish, with all the properties that sold. And we didn't do the Mayo formula to determine our offer. We just pretty much looked at the rehabbed homes and then also look at what they sold for before they were renovated and before they were sold to a homeowner. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much how I would determine an ARV for a property. I know I covered a lot in this video, so please let me know if you have any questions. I hope that gives you a great overview of how to determine the ARV for properties that you're trying to contract. I hope you guys have a great day, and I look forward to providing some great content to you later.